Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. I am fighting something right now, so my voice is going to sound a little weird throughout most of this, but I really appreciate y'all being here. Pat, Tip, Seb, Shaun, you're here every day, so I'm like... but I really appreciate y'all being
Not
here.
off to a good start.
Okay, well,
Hey, whoa. Will you two stop having a domestic here? You know what I mean? We're guests.
we do this every day, so
Right on.
I gotta poke them a little bit, just every once in a while, because I
Off
can.
to an
And
even worse start.
you know what? While I'm poking Shaun, what you could be doing is poking the like button, hitting the subscribe to the channel, hitting the notification bell, all that stuff. See, I have plans. I have things going on. Anyway, besides the point, I have a number of topics, and we could get into any of them. But I'm wondering, does anybody have any thoughts? Anything off the top of your guys' heads that you want to bring to the group for a discussion?
Well, we did butter last time, so
We did. Yeah,
it was fantastic.
We always talk coffee or bourbon.
Oh man, don't get coffee started with Shaun.
Dude,
Yeah.
you're in for some trouble.
Okay, well, let's dive into one of the topics that was brought up by one of the viewers, which was managing your temper.
Ooh,
And this was brought up to me by one of the guys that watches the show, and he was saying that he noticed it seemed like there was a lot more like rage on the roads, off the roads, just in general, social media. Like there just seems to be a lot of anger out there.
Yep.
And he was saying that, he struggles sometimes to manage his own temper in and amongst all of that as it kind of builds around you. So let's go right off the top. Anybody got any thoughts on, how to manage your temper, even like in the worst moments, how to keep that in check? Who wants to go
just
first?
to set the stage, the individual that asked this question had hit me up with this question some time ago, and I kept saying, I'll hit it up on my live IG chat, or we'll drag it over to the collective, or whatever the case is. But in my live IG chat that I just came off, I stated, hey, if anyone's got any questions for Tip or for Pat or for Seb, hit me up in these live comments right now, and we'll bounce it over to the collective. And the moment that the individual said, hey, can we talk about that temper topic? I was crossing my fingers that would be it, because I feel like I owe him this conversation, and what better panel to have it within this panel right today. So it's cool.
Right on.
Yeah. So let's put Tip in first off, right off the bat. How about yourself? Got any tips on managing your temper?
I do, but what I've found, because of that extensive career being a Royal Marine for such a long time, I think age has helped me so much more. Age, becoming a dad, becoming responsible for a clan, for a family, as temper, it takes me a lot more to go over the edge now. And also, when I was younger, it's a classic saying, like young, dumb, and full of whatever, you know what I mean? But the fact is, when you're younger, you've got all those chemicals, especially, when you're moving in those teenage years and get to your early 20s, you're bursting with energy, with testosterone, with everything, and it's oozing out. And it's a lot, I think it's a lot harder for it was for me as a young person to sort of manage it. And if you sort of layered a bit of alcohol on top of it, that really just sort of like the management just goes out the window. There's a lot of bravado. And I can say, I don't. It's looking back now, with hindsight, yeah, it was a bit of a dick, really. I mean, but it was probably booze and fueled and all those chemicals in your body that made me who I was. And also the social sort of like scenarios where you were sort of put into. There was always like that bit more confrontation. I'd say nowadays they're less confrontational, but it's more. So a lot of it, maybe even the alcohol's been taken out of a lot of it, but it still happens. I mean, it still happens. But just for me, it's all my experiences, life experiences, and then those added responsibilities means that it takes a bit more for me to to flash. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Pat, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I got a bunch here. I talk about this one. Absolutely. Age has a big portion of one's ability to control one's temper, right? Age, wisdom. You've got to check yourself. And here's a couple tips I tell people. So I had a really, really, really bad relationship, marriage for a long time, and I've disclosed it on different podcasts and stuff like that. And it was a big portion of why it was so bad, because there was prescription meds and booze involved on her part. And it went on for a long time, very delusional, a lot of accusations about everything, paranoid. And I recall losing my temper several times. One day, she told me that she was going to take a fall down the steps and call the cops and say that I pushed her. And as soon as she said that, I went out and got a digital tape recorder. So any conversation we had from then on out, full disclosure, I would pull out the digital tape recorder, and you could see a red light flashing, and I would set it down. That does two things. Number one, of course, it's recording her. But number two, I'm recording me. So now I have to, I'm on tape right now. I'm being recorded. So I tell guys, imagine that you are recording yourself all the time. And at the end of the day, you have to play back and listen and evaluate what you said and how you said it and to whom you said this thing. The same goes for in the vehicle. I do not do road rage. Every one of my cars, including my kids' cars, I installed cameras, front and rear recording cameras with hard drive, because not only will that record somebody else doing, involving themselves in some kind of douchebaggery, but I'm recording me. I have to maintain accountability. So there's a couple ways right there. And then you got to remember that it's adolescent. Just because you're loud and angry doesn't mean that you're going to get a point across. A point is much better received if you are, it's much more palatable if you are well maintained. So just a couple tips, food for thought, because I was that guy a couple decades ago. Boogaja!
That's a great point. Seb, you got any, you want to add on anything?
Yeah. At the end of the day, don't yell louder, but strengthen your argument. That's essentially what Pat is talking about here. But what we are talking about really is ego. And that is very prevalent. And it is prevalent in young men due to, as Tip mentioned, neuroscience and such. But we need to have coping mechanisms to offset that. We can't just use that as I'm just a victim here, right? My neuroscience isn't where it needs to be, because we need to be better than that. We have the opportunity to be. We definitely, on a platform like this, we can have these conversations to help these young men make those decisions, make better decisions. So, kudos for that. But for me, it's all about, when I was younger, I had the same fire as a lot of young men. And, it took years to get it under control. But some of the things that I did to help myself was I needed my energy expended. I just couldn't just stay somewhere and kind of gyrating. And if anything happened, I was like in a hand grenade, kind of deal. So it was, what have I done? Have I done my 2 workouts a day, or was I engaged in martial arts, or was I expending that energy in the places that I needed to? Because if you have a propensity for a temper and you have extra energy that's kind of contained in there, and the frustrations of the day and all those things, that you're not off-gassing any of that, good luck trying to keep that in check. There's also another piece, which is preemptively addressing these things. So you don't want to be thinking about the possible consequences or ramifications of you getting involved in the road rage when the road rage happens. It's too late. Like, you need to make those decisions before. What do I have to lose? What are some of the consequences attached to some of my behaviors? Those types of things. How long before I get in a road rage with the wrong someone, and I end up shot, or somebody, worse, a family member in the car, whatever the case may be. So I think controlling one's ego preemptively before we find ourselves in the hot seat, because once the emotional, sort of hand grenade is unpinned, good luck trying to put that back in the back. Like, it won't, right? You won't put the pin back in. So it's important to make those conscious steps prior to anything percolating, in my opinion.
I like that a lot. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. So to add a little bit more, at least from my perspective, what I've seen is this generally happens, the issue, because the individual doesn't have enough tools to manage the circumstances. And so because they don't have the tools, they default to something like temper as the example. And so if you're really confident and really skilled, you don't have to say much. You don't have to flare out. But when I was a young buck, I did flare out because I had a little bit of scrap in me. I kind of liked scrapping, and I was comfortable with it. But the irony of that is, even though I was decent at it, I wasn't good enough. And so once I started becoming far better at, we'll call it violence or those kind of confrontational moments, it was because of BJJ. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu taught me how to kind of strip away the last piece of the puzzle for me, which was I feel like I've got any circumstance under control now. And you have to do enough Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to understand how it teaches you to manage most situations comfortably. But that's kind of the piece that I was missing. And I think that that's a piece that's missing for a lot of young and old men, is when they get in these circumstances where they feel like they can't control it. It's because they don't have the tools to control the moment. So, tool up, as it were.
I like that. Anybody got any thoughts on that before I jump into some comments here?
I mean, exactly what like Shaun said there. It's mega weird as you sort of growing up, you sort of posturing yourself in your place in society or in the group you're in, and you do. And that, like say, maybe I had to have a little giggle with Shaun. You said when I was younger, a scrap was a scrap. That was it. That was part of it. That was it. And a lot of times the next day you're probably best mates again. That there was just those little things that happen. And I think in our generation, that was your rite of passage in a sort of way. Whereas now, I think we're far more switched on with it. And physical exertion, exactly what Seb said, that physical exertion, we all know physical exertion just oozes out chemicals. Perfecto is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That is massive over here, especially in serving Royal Marines and veterans and a bigger sort of broader community. It gives you that place to go where physically you push, when you do BJJ, you push the limit. It's very physical, gets the chemicals moving, and also it gives you the physical confidence to disengage the physicality of things and use your intellect, and it sort of diffuses things before they happen because you've got that, should we say, the physical capability in you to manage anything.
100%.
If I could add one thing quickly.
Absolutely, yeah.
For me, also something that I did as a young man is kind of like young men will tend to have the conversations with their spouse or their girlfriends, and they will have conversations, and there's some posturing going on there. You're trying to paint the picture for who you are as a young man, and sometimes it involves a bit of bravado. I can do this, I can take on people, or whatever the case may be. So if you paint yourself in a corner, and now you're with the girlfriend in the car, and something happened, now you have to live up to these, image that you painted of yourself, and that's very counterproductive. And if you are to paint an image that's an image positive, that somebody that's capable of communicating at a cerebral level, that's capable of detaching from their emotion, those types of things. So paint that picture, so when something happens, you don't blow up.
Yeah, 100%. We got some really great comments here that I just want to hit on because they're awesome. First off, Winter Storm's watching from the hospital X-ray waiting room, so good to see you, Winter Storm. There's no excuses not to watch, so absolutely appreciate it. He said, indeed, this is one of those must-watches for sure, from Daniel. Daniel said 100% what Max said makes you accountable for reactions. I love the idea of putting the camera in your head. I mean, that is just fantastic. Of now you're being recorded, because it really does make you rethink not only how you speak, but how you stand, how you react to things, what your physical presence is. There's a whole bunch to that, which I think is fantastic. Dr. C, Carlos is in the house. What's up, buddy? He said, I have also found that parenting is important. How your parents deal with stressful situations, and do they explode with anger? This is something good to mitigate anger issues for children in the future. And I did want to touch on that. We have a couple of people that hit this on this particular point. Any thoughts on parenting, on being a parent, on your own parents, how they manage their stress versus how you manage your stress? Anybody?
For another podcast, perhaps.
For another podcast.
Yeah, man, that this could be a 2-hour discussion right there.
Just this one question, right?
I mean, the relevance is massive, though. That is bang on, though, isn't it? It is bang on.
Yeah. Rebel Murray says, "I've never heard it put like that. What Pat just said. Imagine you're recording yourself at all times. Great insight. There we go." Tanya hits us with this one. Modeling is key too.
Yeah.
There was a documentary about orphan male elephants killing rhinos, and the biologist solved it by introducing an older bull elephant to model behavior. It goes into the same kind of system. But I one of the other things that I want to talk about was BJJ martial arts. In martial arts in general, BJJ is great for it, but is not only the exertion, not only the actual act of being confident of doing them, but it is a modeling behavior, because you're going into a room full of other adults usually, and then you're then gauging yourself on them as well. So you're introducing yourself into a completely new environment, and then having to gauge your own reactions based off what they're doing. And if you're flipping out on the mats, you're going to get told pretty fast.
Well, what you will do is get flipped on the mats.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be an eye-opener. Yeah. So I would say this, that if you're stepping onto the BJJ mats for the first time or the 1000th time, every time you get on the mats, it's a calibration moment. You're yardsticking yourself against the universe around you. If you think you're large and in charge before you step into your first BJJ class, you're not. And you will be calibrated in your first session. It's called a never-ending yardstick. The moment that your ego starts telling you that you're the man, you're not. And the mats will illustrate that to you every single time that you step onto the mats. Even if you are, quote unquote, the man, at some point in that night, you're going to get caught. You're going to get armbarred or choked or heel hooked or whatever. And the reality is that none of us have got it all perfectly figured out. And anything that you can introduce into your life that makes you think, oh, I'm not a winner every time, or, oh, I don't have everything figured out, BJJ will help you do that.
I like that a lot. Any thoughts on that? On BJJ or on martial arts in general? Helping out with your own temper? Everybody's good?
I mean, that's, once again, we go on and on with that. I agree 100%. I've been in the fight world for a long time. And, just like Shaun was saying, I mean, as soon as temper gets in the way, like let's say you're sparring, for instance, you're not as effective either. You're just not. You're not as effective. If you could keep that cool demeanor after you get punched right in the beak and your eyes water up, you're more likely to be effective versus completely ineffective looking through a straw. So, yeah, 100% on that.
Like that. I was thinking about this while we were talking, but the concept of managing your temper it's like a learned skill, right? Mm-hmm. It's not something that you can just all of a sudden like, oh, okay, I know how to manage my temper now because I think about it. And I was going to use myself as an example. One of the reasons I started seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress and stuff was the fact that I had my son, like, he flinched just the moment I walked in the room. And I was like, first off, that's not right. I'm not going to allow that. And I had to change it. But there's even now where I get upset and I will raise my voice, or I'll try to, instigate movement through volume some days. But even afterwards, I have to take myself and go, okay, wait, no, that wasn't the right thing to do. I could have done it better in X, Y, Z. And then I will sit Arden down, my son. I'll sit him down and be like, hey, man, I apologize for losing my temper there. Shouldn't have happened. These are the things that I'm going to be doing next to engage it and make it better for next time so that we don't have this negative interaction. And I think that's a big part of it, is that it's a step-by-step building process that you're not always going to win, as you said it with martial arts. And that's
so what you've just discussed is a yardsticking moment. And I'm going to say this because you've stated this out loud before, and it was a new term to me called rage spiral. Yeah. And you'd stated, I'll let you explain what rage spiral was for you, but that was then, and this is now. So if you can make that comparison.
For sure. early on when I first got out of the military, I would get in these things called rage spirals. Well, I called them that, and it was I would get angry about something innocuous, some small thing, right? And then I would get angry at the fact that I was angry about it. And then I would get angry at the fact that I couldn't stop being angry about this stupid friggin', and it would just, and I would ramp myself up into this rage spiral, right? And I would just, and it would make everything worse all around me. And then to the point that there was a number of times I completely blacked out. Like the stress level was just like, and I was out.
Didn't you say you passed out?
Yeah. I don't remember I just remember like being angry
right.
and then blank, and then I'd like come to on the ground. So
I believe I said, as you were passing out, if you banged your silly head off the coffee table, maybe it would have knocked some sense.
It might have. I mean,
did I say that? I think I did.
Yeah. To now, where I get upset, and I can recognize that I'm getting upset and go, okay, you know what, we're good. Take a breath. Remove myself from the situation, or look at it differently, or engage it from a different angle. That has been a built process. It wasn't one day I woke up and like, oh, cool, I got it figured out now.
You know, regret sucks too, man. You know, regret when you blow a gasket. I think a lot of people find themselves losing their temper in a relationship versus road rage and stuff like that. And when that happens, you have this enormous amount of regret afterwards. When I first met we've been together 10 years now, my wife and I. We've been married 7. When we first met, I apologized in advance. I says, you know what? We were like a couple months into our relationship. I said, you know, this is so freaking perfect. You are my apps. You are my person. I said, if we end up having an argument of some kind, it's probably going to be my fault. So I apologize in advance in the event that happens. But check it out, man. 10 years, we have not had a crossed word. 10 years. Now, and I think the big key is there that checking yourself. If you're having a discussion, first off, you got to pick fights, right? Don't bring up trivial crap that you know can entice an argument, because most dudes do that. You know, there's certain things my wife does. She's a unicorn. She's perfect in every way, in my opinion. She's got a couple little things that she does, and I am not going to bring them up. You know, like for instance,
not even on a live chat. Dude, you could bring them up right now. Come on, drop the heat.
You know, like for instance, backing into the driveway. You know, putting it in reverse before the car is stopped. I would rather pay to get that transmission fixed.
Jack.
I'm just saying, man. It's not.
Dude, I hear you.
It's not worth it. So, you know, and then deep centering breaths. If you're in a discussion about like finances or whatever, deep centering breaths. And because as soon as you put your foot in your mouth, now it's both ways. And now you're in this like cycle of perpetual back and forth, tit for tat. And it's hard to get out of that. And then you have regret.
100%. Tip, you had a point?
Just on that, I think everything that Max said is bang on as well. But it is just back to the buddy system as well, because a lot of times, especially with the temper spiral, when you go, and I think we've all, especially people that have suffered with some sort of mental health illness, but aren't aware of it as such. If you're buddy and you can see something uncharacteristically, things letting them roll away, and it's a very, and as well, it's a very common sort of like, loss of, that consciousness for that individual. It's a common sort of like flaw of just a different layer of mental health. That there's an issue there that it'd be good, even as a buddy, just to maybe have a quiet word or give them a bit of signposting towards where they can maybe talk to somebody about it. Because, as well, if it's uncharacteristic, as I got off an American buddy of mine, it stands out like a turd in a glass of milk, doesn't it? The fact is that, all of a sudden you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like buddies is really important, especially if you see something uncharacteristic with your friends, to maybe give them a bit of signposting.
Absolutely.
That's a great tip, because what you just described is something that I see from time to time, and it's literally this: that guy doesn't know that he is the way he is. He's unaware of how much he's in the hurt locker, and it's our job to kind of guide them out of that hurt locker to some degree. Hopefully, not just a one-on-one, actually, which will work. But nowadays, I'm trying to recruit as many people that individual knows to start bringing out that out of that hurt locker moment. So, yeah, that's a great point.
100%. Zab, you got any points on that?
Yeah, just going back to what Pat was saying, which was bang on with the relationship piece. Excuse me. There's a few things. Resentment is built over time, right? It doesn't happen by accident. And generally what happens is communication is stifled for one reason or another. And I think that one of the key things that we don't discuss in a relationship very often, or at least don't do a very good job at it, is to establish what type of communication we actually respond better to, and do so before the fight starts. Again, preemptively addressing it instead of waiting for the fight to start and try to impose on others how they should be communicating with us and how we should be communicating with them. And so for me, a lot of my strategy around managing resentment and some of the insidious fights, insidious things that will come up and percolate in a fight later is about communicating the little things. Like this is what or how I'd like to sort of have communication about a certain topic or whatever the case may be. As you just established that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that oftentimes in relationships, the words of a spouse means a lot to the other spouse. So it's you can cause irreparable damage very quickly by saying something that you absolutely didn't believe, but now you've caused irreparable damage to that relationship. And so it's also important to understand in the same vein that the person that you are with, if your words mean the world to them and you overstep, you cause irreparable damage, but also it causes an outrageous reaction where now there has to be fire coming the other way because anger is the bodyguard of sadness. And now you've caused a deep wound. And now the person is sort of returning fire with hellfire,
Mm-hmm.
Sharp words.
Yep. We got a comment from Tanya. Says, in regards to regret, the best apology is change behavior. Yeah. If you've had any examples of this instance of leadership through example, I'd love to hear and learn from them. Anybody got any examples of those that have changed their behavior for sake of a relationship or as an apology?
Is it apology?
Every year for me,
Yeah,
for real.
Right.
I mean,
over and over again?
Since I started realizing that I just got to do better. I mean, every year since then, however long ago that was, and I still don't feel like I'm even halfway there. So, yeah, I guess I've been apologizing for most of my life.
I mean, for me, exactly. From my previous professional environment, I think from a very early age, I had that. You know what I mean? Because we make choices, don't we? Make choices, and sometimes, even when you make that choice, you may think it's the perfect choice, but you haven't got the depth of experience, you haven't got the life experience maybe to back it up, and then you realize that you've maybe taken the wrong path, and that is maybe not been effective. So that stepping back, turning around or turning left and right to people you're working with and give it, I messed up there. Let's take it back here. Let's do this, and that. And I think if you take that professionally and then socially, I think that's a really positive way to do it. It's just the old right, rather than, you must admit that the stubbornness goes, I'll just follow it anyway and we'll blow through. It ain't going to happen, is it? Because again, at the end of the day, it's unprofessional, and two, it's going to upset any sort of like social, communication or relationship there.
Yeah, but when you do it wrong, and we all do, I mean, when you push ahead stubbornly, as we all do from time to time, well, that's the perfect opportunity to learn that hard life lesson. And that goes back to then changing your behavior. So the change behavior may happen before you do the behavior, but it's definitely got to happen after you do the behavior. So there's that.
That's a great point. Matt, we got a great field out here asking questions. Doc C says, I meant to say, correction. There's an earlier one here. He says, I always recommend to be specific about certain comments, such as you don't. I meant to say, don't overgeneralize. You always do this. You never do that. Mm-hmm. Those are big traps that couples get into relationships. A great point by Slav Commander, by all means. The point that I wanted to make on this is that this really applies in life, right? Not just in the relationship. If you are making massive generalizations of like, this never happened, I never win, right? I've heard that many times about people entering into contests, right? Well, I never win. Never is a long time, right? And Sean's caught me on this on many times, is that the words we use really matter. And to just throw out massive generalizations like that are disproportionate, I guess, to what the actual issue is, usually. Any thoughts on that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, words matter.
Words matter. I was going to say, so in terms of managing your temper, let's get back to that you were talking about this, Sean, earlier, was the rage spirals, or that I got into. I was talking about rage spirals. So the use of tools. What are some of the tools that you guys have used or that have found really helpful, in managing your own temper, but also perhaps in managing others' tempers that you've had to mentor over time, as you all are all mentors to some? What do you think? Seb, I'm going to put you on the fire.
Okay. I believe as a leader, definitely, as Tanya mentioned earlier, demonstrating the behavior is worth more than anything you could possibly say. So if you're talking about, guys controlling their tempers or having constructive conversations, and when somebody comes to you and they put you in a spot in a spot that's uncomfortable, say criticizing some of your actions or perhaps questioning or challenging as they should, and now your ego flares up and you lose your mind, or you have a disproportionate reaction, you have now demonstrated the standard. You have set the standard. Good luck with that. Good luck trying to make them better. So it's all about that demonstration. What do you do when chaos hits you? How do you control chaos in a detached and controlled fashion? And people are watching. Just do it right. And so that's one of the ways that I've done that with my guys.
I like that a lot.
Right on.
Pat, what do you got?
When I was a team leader at the unit, I'm in charge of 5 extreme type A's. You guys know the types. If there was any kind of pissing and moaning, back and forth, I would just say, all right, we're kitting up. We're going upstairs to the ring and round robin sparring. And everything becomes settled after about a half an hour into it. Everything becomes settled. So that was one way. Out and about, with either my kids or people that I know, if I see flare-ups, we're vicarious learners, you know what I mean? So, and not only that, but if attitude and behavior is contagious. So if you approach somebody who's detonating, and you say, hey, man, just come on over this side. Come on over here. Take a deep breath. Let me chat with you a little bit instead of, adding fuel to his fire. Sometimes you can help diffuse that situation. I've done that a bunch of times with people because you could see it, and it's going to escalate until the point of where it becomes out of control. And then there's no more clarity of thought, because when you hit a point in rage, in temper, that boiling point, there's no more clarity of thought. You're not thinking straight whatsoever. So I've been part of that several times out and about, or with my kiddies, just bring them to the side and say, hey man, let's have a little chit chat.
I like that.
Use
Tip. Got any thoughts?
For me, it's I think there's 2 words that do play in this. One's discretion. So the fact is, if whatever arises not there, the fact is, especially not necessarily you're a leader in command or a responsibility as a father or something out there, there's discretion. But the discretion, so that everything you sort of like take away the heat of whatever the sort of flare up is, but it's brought with discretion. It hasn't sort of got resolution yet, but the discretion means that nobody's been put out of joint. Pull the discretion away, and then you back it up. And I've always backed up with being completely genuine. You actually really do give a fiddlers about this human being and how then you need to what is the case here, because no matter what friction happens or escalation in life and society, it's just a different one side of a story and 2 heads come together. Somebody might have come from a different place whatsoever, and that road rage incident could be just he might have just dropped off his mum, she's down in hospital or something like that, and just different comments. So if you use discretion to straight away diffuse the situation, don't gain resolution, keep communication, and then you be genuine, be who you are, and give them a sound advice. And that goes back as well to you being the mentor, not just a mentor, but more not the perfect example, because I'm not. I'm as rough as a badger's horse. I am. You know what I mean? But the fact is, you used to be, you're upstanding, you're genuine, and you know that your moral compass will get them on the straight and narrow or get the resolution. But I think discretion and, pulling the fuel from the fire is probably the best thing.
I like that a lot. Shaun, you want to round us off?
Yeah, I think another thing that you can consider as a potential solution or a strategy or to adjust the outcome is simply this: pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt the moment. So if, to Tip's example, if someone is having a hard day and they're starting to get a little wild or a little flared out or whatever the case is, and you see it popping off, it's not that you got to walk straight up to them and hit them with a pattern interrupt. You can be sauntering by and say, "Hey man, nice shoes." Now they're looking down at their shoes. They don't even know what shoes they're wearing. Or, "Hey, is your shoelace untied?" It doesn't matter what you do. The pattern interrupt is to plant something in someone's mind to make them shift their trajectory, to recalibrate them in a way that isn't right off the cliff. And there's a ton of different ways that you can do that. You don't have to be a Jedi master to do any of it. There's really simple strategies to pattern interrupt. So I'd consider that.
I really like that a lot. It actually made me think of horses for some reason. The key thing I thought on that was the moment you get someone to look at their shoes, they're not hunting anymore. And I think that's a lot of it that we forget, is that we are naturally, human beings are hunters, right? We have eyes on the front of our face to be able to lock on our target in a 3D view. And the funny thing is when you work with horses a lot, when you actually look at them, they immediately get uncomfortable because you're looking at them. You're looking right in their eyes, because that's what hunters do. And the key thing when you're working with horses, in order to keep yourself calm, in order to keep the animal calm beside you, is to look away and still get them to do stuff. Just don't look at them. And I think that's a lot of the times where, you get so centered, so focused on the problem, whatever it is that's making you upset or whatever it is that's making you angry, that you're not taking any time to look away. You're not taking any time to, shift your point of view physically or emotionally or psychologically or anything like that.
Well, here's a twist for you. So horses aren't humans.
True.
So let's get to the human aspect, and that is most people are kind of angry because they're not being seen.
Mm-hmm. That is a great point. So I actually mentioned this when Salty Paul gave me this topic. He talked about being in the car, and I was like, the average person is probably so angry in the car from just not being seen in general. And I think the key point that you made earlier about engaging them, "Hey man, nice shoes," you're engaging them. So you're seeing them, they're seeing you, but it's taking their view away from the issue, at least in my mind. Was there more to it than that, Shaun? Or what am I?
No, I think it was pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Okay. But that's what I meant. The point is that I was trying to get at is the fact that, we don't realize that we are hunters. And when we get really focused on something, I think it leaves us, if we don't know how to actually engage that, it kind of leaves us in the wind. We just sit there and focus on something. And, when you say you get target locked on something and you're going to smash that regardless of what you need to do in order to do it. In order to break that, I love the idea of pattern interrupting and actually getting to look somewhere else, because that's going to engage them differently.
I really like what Shaun said there about the pattern interrupt, in the sense that imagine what you can do with this. There's quite a bit of wizardry that can be done with this, and especially when it comes to managing your own temper. But just imagine if you shift focus to somebody else, not as in I'm going to unload on them, but how can I make their day better? Because mine is a write-off today. Like I've had a bunch of things happen today. My day is a write-off. How can I make somebody else's day better? And that to me has been a very sort of it's worked out really, really good when I start focusing less, because we tend to do that. We either don't focus at all on our internal mechanisms, or we're all about them. There's no real moderated approach here,
100%. We got a comment from Doc C. Says one of the big issues with psychiatric disorders is emotional regulation. Being able to control your emotional center with your reasoning center in the brain. This is what Pat was saying, and he's absolutely right. So I wanted to point that out. You got a little check mark from Doc C there, Pat. Yeah, awesome.
So let me ask you this. Sorry, before Tanya's
Yep.
question, Pat, specifically, when you were a young man coming up in the system, did you really know, or did you have a good understanding of how little you had a grip on your temper? And I'm not saying you had a terrible grip on it, but contextualizing it against now. At that time, did you realize that you weren't doing it really well?
Nope.
'Cause
I
I
realize
didn't.
it now. So, regret.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
when I first came in, I was very humble because everybody else, anywhere I went, was senior to me. Like going to the SF course, going to combat dive school, going to Halo school. I was always the junior. When I got, on an A team or teams at the unit, I remember my tact sucked bad, and I would purposely try to provoke emotions. Purposely. I remember doing that on several occasions. There was a big gear shift in my life, post retirement, and I don't have the stomach for it anymore. I am not going to be that same person. And I've even, apologized to people for something I said to them 30 years ago.
You and me both.
Yeah, what are you talking about? We were just goofing around. I said, yeah, I could have approached it differently, man.
You and me both.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do that. I get calls from people all the time, and they say, hey, man, not calls, but either a message or email. And hey, we had this falling out back in 1998. And I'm going, yeah, but we were still buds. I mean, yeah, we had falling out. But so yeah, back to that regret thing, there's still moments in my life way back when where I think about him and go, oh man, I was such a dumbass. Oh, and regret sucks, man. So if you could mitigate that early on, you don't have to live with that regret, because regret sucks.
It so sucks. It's so double sucks that we actually created a thing called The Collective and named coffee mugs Do Your Best, because I have literally stated the only way to manage regret is to do your freaking best.
Yes.
Because I hate the regrets that I've got, and the only way I can make them go away is to scrub my brain, and I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So I'm managing my present and my future by doing my best, with
that regret thing, unless you're a psychopath, with no remorse, you're going to carry that regret with you forever.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So don't.
But then again, I think all those regrets and all those little faux pas when we're younger, that makes us who we are. So those highs and lows,
buddy,
you can't live in that calm of going, and if you don't mess up or cock up, then really you ain't learning bugger all, are you?
Yeah, dude, I wouldn't want it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want to take away all of those mistakes. It's what made me who I am. I wouldn't mind of brushing off some of the sharp edges of all the mistakes. You know what I mean?
That would be nice. It would be pretty awesome. Ravo Murray says, I'll second the past regret statement. It does suck. Yeah, I think we all know it. You got a great point though. Tip is the fact, or Tip and Shaun, is the fact that they did make us. Right, we would not be here right now on this collective talking about this particular topic unless we had made those mistakes, and unfortunately, it just sucks. That's kind of all I can say about it. Tanya does have a comment. She says, "Orienting is a step most people skip, as we wish to act to protect our ego. Starting my response was my attempt to understand where they're coming from, diffuse the emotional charge. Diffuses the emotional charge. That's a great point. I actually did this." I had a lot of issues with road rage actually on the street, and I hit a point where somebody cut me off super hard. It was a weird interaction, and I was getting really angry. And then I was like, I just did that like a week ago to somebody else.
Yep.
Oh, okay. And it just immediately diffused the temper, the anger, all of the extra stuff that was going on. It was like, okay, I've been there. And so now every time I'm driving around and somebody does something dumb, I go, oh yeah, no, I've been there too. Done that one too. Oh yeah, check, done that one too. So it does that helps a lot. We have whatchamacallit. Any comments on that before we carry
Just
on?
one thing to follow up on what Tanya said and the good doctor earlier. We also carry a lot of insecurities as humans, and if those aren't addressed, your reputation does precede you, but your demons are following you around everywhere, and so your perception of what's being said by who and how is affected deeply by how you perceive yourself. And so if there is unresolved issues, those have to be taken into account and they have to be addressed so that you can optimize your own mechanisms of communication, because otherwise, you're carrying that forever.
100%.
Do you know what's really disappointing? That when I was born, no one told me how much homework I would have.
Nobody told me either, man. That's not fair. We have another couple great ones here that I want to hit. Tanya says, I haven't lived a high octane life like y'all, but for small screw ups, I avoid the shame spiral now. I feel guilty, but don't wallow because it gets in the way of improving. And that is a great point, is that your regret and your anger can lead into a shame spiral later. And that is, I love how she puts it here. It gets in the way of improving.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fantastic. And Rob Murray says, I found the crucial follow-up to screw-ups. Am I learning from this? How can I do it better going forward? It's lessen the magnitude of regret. I like that a lot.
Goes back to Shaun's taking action, right? As Shaun always likes to say, and it's absolutely accurate. What actions are you taking to make things better? So it's good that you have regrets. It means that you have some compassion and you're capable of reflection. But what are you actually doing to be different?
Yeah, thoughts and actions. And, I look at this panel. It's the freaking panel of action men. I've said it in the past that when I was a young buck, I wanted to be an action man, a man of action. Not quite G.I. Joe, but an action man. Actually, action man was a thing back in the UK when I was born and raised in the UK. Action man was a word. And so that's what I wanted to be, a man of action. And it's how I've tried to live my life, and I know that it creates results. And I'm looking at this panel, and frickin' it creates results because it's a panel of action-oriented individuals. It should act as a good example of what can be accomplished if you add that extra word after thoughts. Action, thoughts, action, thoughts, action.
That's great. 100%. Glenn says, this podcast should be mandatory listening prior to entering their city of Vancouver. 100%.
You give them a viewing room.
Right? You got to pull over as you go through the border and bang, you're good to go. That's it's fantastic. This has been awesome. Any further thoughts? Anybody got anything else? I've got
I mean, if we're going to stay on this topic, I could add a couple more things.
By all means.
Please do.
Well, with the road rage thing, it's more prevalent now than ever. And I think a big reason is because, and this is my opinion, but I know it's the truth. Most drivers are distracted now. The amount of times you're passing somebody going the opposite way and you see a cell phone up in their face it's the percentage of people, and we're not multitaskers. We are not capable of performing two things simultaneously. Cognitive thought. We could task switch or task stack or perform certain skills intuitively, but we're not. We human beings are not multitaskers. So if they're texting and driving or on their phone, they're not driving. So a lot of it is just dumbassery, right? So road rage is perpetuated because of dumbassery, or it's a result of that. So number one, you have to understand that I have become like an old man, a beeper, beep, beep, but it's a courtesy beep because I know that the person in front of me is on their cell phone and not paying attention. So it's a beep, beep instead of a, the other one, beep, because now you're provoking emotion.
Now you're temper beeping.
Right. Now you're temper. Yes. And the other, somebody mentioned it earlier about, road rage can be mitigated if you consider that this circumstance may not have been because of provocation or it was
malicious intent.
with malice. I too many times, like young drivers, for instance, do something stupid, and you look in their car and you realize, oh crap, they're 16 years old. I'm glad that I didn't flip them off or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if it does happen where that guy cuts you off with malice, dude, you just gotta ignore it. I mean, ignore it. But that's the camera thing, man. I mean, if you have cameras in your car, not only can you prove it to, let's say, an LEO in the event that things do escalate and it turns into an accident, but it's going to help you understand, avoid it. It's going to help you risk the chance of escalating a situation because you're recording yourself too. But it's so prevalent nowadays. But I think it's because most drivers are distracted. Plus, we're devolving as a species. We're devolving. We're getting so dumb.
There are a few that are definitely lacking. I think my wife and I were talking about this the other day. Is that as we've been lowering the standards of everything, the median, the bell curve is is just continually lowering. As the standards lower, the bell curve lowers, and just never really. You have more and more people that aren't quite up to the task, but. That's what we're here. That's what we're doing here. So we can.
I'll say
engage
this.
people.
I know we're gonna run out of time, so I can't make this a big strong point, but it is a big strong point that we could talk about another time, perhaps. It's this. As you described, someone with driving their vehicle and they're distracted, Pat. Maybe they're on their cell phone or whatever the case is. It happened to me exactly yesterday afternoon. I was on my bike. There was a truck in front of me. He was talking to his cell phone like this, steering away, didn't throw his indicator on, and just swerved into a parking lot about 10 feet in front of me.
Right.
And as I barely saved my life going around him, I looked back at him and gave him a look and just kept on riding. But it's the look that matters. Because if you just wander through the world letting everyone do whatever they want all the time,
right,
that's how we devolve.
Yeah.
But if someone is like, I didn't have to pull over and punch him through the window. It doesn't require that. What I had to do was help him understand that just happened, and I recognized it. And do you know what he did in that glance? I could see him already doing that, already almost red-faced, because he knew that he'd done wrong.
Yep.
And so we've got to hold society accountable to some degree without turning it into a temper moment and without evolving it up into violence.
Yeah, I'm all about the side eye too, bro.
Side eye.
I put it down to quality acting, lovies. Yeah, the fact is, you're like, oh, what we're going to get? Give him that look. Give him that look. You know what I mean? So the fact is, if you're conscious, one, you're not getting angry, but just pick what look am I going to give him. You know what I mean?
It was similar to that.
See, it's all about acting, isn't it?
It is your character.
What I love about that is that you're holding people accountable, but it's not aggressively holding people accountable, right? It's just enough to know that they know that they know kind of deal. And I do love the idea of making it accurate, like thinking about what face you're going to give them. That's fantastic. I love that. Robin Murray makes this point. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unfriendly. Marcus Aurelius on expecting foolishness. And I love this because Shaun always says, life is not an ambush. So if you prepare yourself, you won't be surprised ahead of time.
Yeah, but the conversely to that, if you set your, I know I'm not going to run down Marcus Aurelius. Dude, it's legit. But I will say this, that if that's how you're starting your morning, it's not like a really positive message.
Right.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
And like, I know that that's the way the world is to some degree, but I don't have to keep reminding myself because I've been in it like nearly 60 years. So my idea is this, whatever, man, I'm just going to do my best.
Focus on the expectations that you have of yourself and let go of the expectations you have for everybody else.
Everyone can do whatever they're going to do. I'm going to do my best.
Can't control that.
I love that. Expectations is it's a whole other topic in and of itself, of managing your expectations and being able to do that. But anything else on managing your tempers? I asked all the questions I had, but anybody else got anything?
Well, it is such a massive subject, and
It
I know
really
we
is.
did kick at it a little bit, but literally, it's a massive subject.
We got Tanya says Matt enforcers check people not for their sake or safety, but for others. And that's a great point. And that goes back to accountability, right? If you keep those around you accountable, you have to be able to do it. And it says if you lose your temper, you lose control of the situation.
Absolutely. Yep.
Aye.
Yeah, there you go.
And we talked that point. Yep.
Yeah, we did.
Clarity of thought, man.
That's key, man. If you can't keep your head in the situation, you're no longer involved in it. I think. Any final thoughts? Anything?
Sorry, just on that. If
Yeah.
you can't keep your head in the game, then you're not playing a good game. But by the way, you're not the only one in the game. As someone's over there death spiraling, making that cool, all of a sudden everyone else thinks it's cool to death spiral. And so the example is you got to get a grip on yourself, and you've got to get a grip on everyone around you visually. They've got to see that you're cool as a cucumber in order to encourage them to be as cool as a cucumber. The world should be full of Fonzies, not Chachis. You know what I mean?
It's a great way of putting it. Any with that, any final points from the panel? Pat, you got anything left burning on? Nothing? Good to go?
Nope, not really. I mean, I could talk about anything.
Tip, any final thoughts?
No, just a cracking night. Great to meet you guys. And a great topic to talk about, because it's I think the big word is prevalence. It's so prevalent at the minute. If you get a process, you can own it. Then I think you're in a good place. Any young person is.
I like it. Seb, final thoughts?
Yeah, just I would say too. It was said earlier that what the mistakes that we made are a part of who we are, and that's absolutely accurate. But we also don't want young men out there to be like, well, just go make all the mistake we made, because some of us are lucky to be here. And so I think what's important is to avoid the catastrophic mistakes, catastrophic failures, catastrophic mistakes. The rest of them, the little things, yes, they will come anyways.
That's a great point. Shaun, anything last minute?
I just want to say thanks to Tip. Good to see you again, buddy, for showing up. And thanks to Pat for showing up. It's great to see you again. Hopefully we'll get to do this in the future again. Love the conversation. I love cool people talking about a single subject from a variety of different vectors that make me think. Like today, I'm already better at this subject because of your wisdom from this panel. So thanks a lot, fellas.
Thank you.
100% fantastic. I'm going to finish off with this last comment because it's fantastic. Dr. C says, mindfulness helps develop the capacity to respond skillfully to anger rather than react impulsively. And I think that kind of sums it up for us, which is perfect. So as we all learn how to be better, as we all build upon our own capabilities of managing our anger, we can grow every day. And we do that here with us. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.